that time, I had no idea that God was gonna do all of that and do it in that way. Like, I just had no idea how he would keep his promise to open up heavens and pour down a blessing until there was no more need. He did do exactly that. Hey guys, thank you so much for clicking on today's video. My name is Dia, and today I'm going to share my testimony on how God kept and delivered on his Malachi 3 promise. So if you're not familiar with the promise, don't worry, we're going to go into all of that. This video is going to be very in-depth because I really just want to share with you all how God revealed himself to me, and just to give you insight into how he works, and yeah, just all of that stuff. So let's go ahead and get into the video. I should have filmed this video a couple of months ago when everything was still fresh and new in my mind, but I did take some notes so that I make sure to hit all the important points and kind of just like stay on topic, because like I said, I really want to go into depth, but it's because I want you guys to just get a better look into how God operates. I'm gonna start by just reading the verse, which is Malachi 3:6. And even, I mean, if you have never read it before, of course, I encourage you to read it. But even if you have read the verse before, and obviously you're here because, you know, you want to know more about this topic, I encourage you to read it again, because for me specifically, I had read that verse before, and we'll talk about how there was a time where I wasn't tithing, and I knew about that verse, but it never, I guess it never really clicked in my mind that it's really a principle where God is saying, if you do this, you will get this result. So let's go ahead and read the verse. And it's Malachi 3:6. So it says, "For I, the Lord, do not change. Therefore, you, O children of Jacob, are not consumed. From the days of your father, you have turned aside from my statutes and have not kept them. Return to me, and I will return to you, says the Lord of hosts. But you say, how shall we return? Will man rob God? Yet you are robbing me. But you say, how have we robbed you? In your tithes and contributions. You are cursed with a curse, for you are robbing me, the whole nation of you. Bring the full tithe into the storehouse, that there may be food in my house, and thereby put me to the test, says the Lord of hosts, if I will not open the windows of heaven for you, and pour down for you a blessing until there is no more need. I will rebuke the devourer for you, so that it will not destroy the fruits of your soil, and your vine in the field shall not fail to bear, says the Lord of hosts. Then all nations will call you blessed, for you will be a land of delight, says the Lord of hosts." So the promise that we're going to be talking about today that the Lord delivered on is the part where he says, see if I will not open the heavens for you and pour down a blessing until there is no more need. So that is a promise that he delivered on. So let's get into it. I have no idea how long this video is going to be, but I would get a snack, get something to drink, get comfortable, and most importantly, get a notepad. Because although, you know, our lives are different and our circumstances are different, if you are not already tithing and you want this same result in your life, God will deliver on his word. I want to start by starting with the backstory, which includes the time where I was not tithing, because I want to share with you guys how I came to repentance about not tithing, and then started tithing, and then in turn how God blessed me. Okay, so let's go back to last year. So last year I separated from the military. The separation was not well planned at all. Just to give the long story short, it was not well planned. So I was really all over the place when I got out, like physically and mentally. So I had got out and I had moved to a new state and I didn't have a job lined up. And during that time, I had gotten off active duty, but I decided to enlist into the reserves so that I was able to still have health care. And so that's what I did. And when I joined the reserves, I ended up having to pick a new job within the Navy, which I was happy about because I didn't really like my old job. And so anyway, I had to pick a new job, and then I had to go to training for the new job. And I want you guys to follow this because all the details that I'm giving you, they're important. I'm all over the place, but it's important. So, okay, so I have to go to training, and the training it was really a blessing for me because, like I said, I was all over the place, and it allowed me to get stationary for about 4 months, and I was able to get paid like I was active duty during that time. So I'm at training, and I'm like, okay, well, I really want to pay off all my debt because that's part of the reason why I'm struggling so much is because like I have this amount of bills, but I don't have that same income coming in now that I'm no longer active duty. So I was really just gung-ho on paying off my debt, and the money that I had calculated everything, and I was like, okay, during this 4 months of training, I'm gonna make just enough money to pay off pretty much all of my debt that I had. So that was my goal. Long story short, I decided to skip out on tithing. But now, mind you, I hadn't been tithing, right? But this was during a time where like the Lord was convicting me, and I was learning more about him and different things. So tithing was something that I knew that I was supposed to be doing, and I had also known that like, okay, Lord, you're providing for me. Like, I'm starting to turn back in a sense, because during this time I had kind of fallen away, and then during this time I had started turning back, I guess you could say. So I was deliberately not tithing, and the way that the Lord convicted me of not tithing, because I knew I should have been, it's crazy. So when people say that the Lord works in mysterious ways, I think that some people don't really understand what that means. So it's not that he works in like mysterious ways, but he works in ways that are unconventional, which I guess could be mysterious, but he works in ways that are not our ways. So you guys know that verse, my ways are not your ways, and he really means that because they're not. The way that he convicted me was while I was in training, I had gotten all the way to the end of the training, right? Because I'm not new to the Navy. I had been in for 8 years. And so I'm in training with people who are new to the Navy. These are people who have just graduated boot camp. They came here to get their job training before they go out and do their jobs in the Navy. So I'm senior in my class. I'm leadership in my class. So yes, we get all the way to the end of training, and I failed the last test. And it was, at the time, it was humiliating because I had double tapped it, which meant I failed it twice. So I had to end up getting rolled back. And so that was embarrassing in and of itself. And so at the time I thought like maybe this has something to do with humility, like I don't really know. So fast forward, and I ended up having to stay an additional 2 weeks, which meant that I was entitled to another paycheck. So because of how everything happened, because I failed I got rolled back like days before I was supposed to graduate. So I ended up having to get like an extension on my orders. So because of how everything happened, like there ended up being an issue with my paycheck. So at the time, like, I'm not working anywhere else. Like, this is my only income. Um, and so there ended up being an issue with the pay. So what happened was I ended up graduating without receiving my last paycheck. So fast forward, I graduate, I move into my apartment, my new apartment, and I'm getting back into like civilian reservist life. And so I'm like, okay, let me go back to school. Let me start using my education benefits. And you do get paid to go to school if you're a veteran. So I'm like, okay, I'll start using those again. And I ended up getting a job within like a week or two of graduating school. So some time goes by and I'm like, okay, you know, I need some money. Like, I have to pay my rent. And I'm waiting on the back pay, but I'm not getting it. And when it comes to my veteran benefits, what happened was someone at the school had never checked me out of the system. So I was still showing as active duty. So I was not entitled to get paid from the VA because I was still showing as active duty, and they weren't, you can't get paid for both. You can't get like housing money from active duty side while you're getting housing money from the VA side. So someone dropped the ball and didn't check me out. So I didn't get a DD-214, which is a paper that says you're no longer active duty. So the VA would not pay me. And that was pretty much like, I was relying on that, and I wasn't getting paid from either one. Somehow during that time, I guess I read Malachi 3 again. And, you know, it had just, that time it resonated because, you know, like, I'm hurting for money. And it was like the Lord made the connection that time. Like, you're getting this result because you're not tithing. Like, you deliberately chose not to tithe. I blessed you during a time of need, when you needed stability, and you chose to not tithe. And so it was during that time that he made that connection in my mind and heart, like, this is what you're dealing with. And so when I read it that time, it wasn't until I repented and just said, like, Lord, that was foolish of me, like, to choose not to tithe. Like, I still could have paid off a good amount of my debt while tithing. Like, that was foolish of me. And so it wasn't until I had repented that it was like, because during this time I'm trying everything to get, because the money is there. I know that I'm entitled to it from both ends, but it was like I'm calling the training every day. I'm calling like, hey, what's going on? Like, can you tell them my rent is coming up? I have bills. Like, can you guys just pay me? Same thing with the VA. I'm calling like, hey, like, I need my rent. Like, and they're like, there's nothing we could do without the DD-214. So it's like wall after wall. And finally, it wasn't until I repented, it was like the Lord removed all roadblocks. It was just like he just released the finances. Like, it was crazy. So that is what led me to go from not tithing to tithing. So I'm now tithing, and the first tithe that I made was about $30, about $300 to my name. And I decided, okay, I'm gonna go out. I went out and bought a little bucket from Target, and I had $30, and I was like, okay, I'm just gonna, you know, put the tithe in here, because I wasn't going to a church. I'm still not going to a church, but you know, so that was the reasoning behind the bucket, which is to put it there until, you know, I figure out, like, you know, like what church I should tithe to. So that's what I did. And this was around November or December of last year, so a few months ago. And so from that day, I have never missed a tithe. So when it comes to like whatever source of income I've gotten since then, I have set aside 10%, and since then started tithing to Dr. Stanley's church. That's the church that I choose to tithe to. So it started with the $30, and I'm going consistently now. Like, I'm not missing when it comes to tithing. And out of nowhere in December, it was like the second week in December, I get a call from a tenant, or not a tenant, my tenant, from my home that I'm renting in Maryland. And I know what you're thinking, like, okay, what about the money from that? There was no surplus from that. The rent that I was getting was just enough to cover the mortgage on the house that I had bought while I was stationed in Maryland. So that was not a source of income for me. It was just covering the mortgage. But anyway, so he calls me at night and he's like, hey, like, your basement flooded. And I'm like, okay. Like, I'm just frozen, because that was one of the things that I had asked the Lord, like, Lord, please don't let anything like catastrophic happen to my house, because I don't know how I would ever afford to fix it. So yeah, and he tells me, you need to get on the phone with your insurance. I'm gonna help you through this because I work in the insurance industry, so I'll help you get it covered by your insurance. So I'm in Texas. I don't know if, like, I'm still in Texas. This is where I reside now. And I'm like, okay, I don't have like money to put into this. I'm far away, and yeah. So that's the situation. But I, like, the entire time, like, immediately when I got the news, like, I never really, it was like the entire time I had a sense of peace. And it was because I knew that I was tithing. I'm like, Lord, what? Like, I just started doing what you asked me to do when it comes to my finances. So, like, I know you're not about to allow me to suffer when it comes to my finances. And suffer, when I say suffer, I mean like I just had a sense that this was coming from God and that he was going to bless me. I had that sense in my heart from the moment that I found out. So even though it looked bad, in my mind, I felt that, like, this is probably how he's going to deliver on that promise. I just need to see him through, or he needs to see me through. The next day, or I think that night, I'm like looking at my insurance policy and it looks like they're not going to cover it. So what had happened was the power went out and it caused the sump pump to stop working, which is the thing that pumps the water, in your basement. It pumps it out. And I didn't have a backup sump pump, so it caused all that water to just rise up. So I'm calling people to see, like, how much they're going to charge to get the water out. And I ended up calling a plumber who had been to my house before. And he tells me, okay, I'll go over there tomorrow and I'll let you know, like, what's going on. So fast forward to the next day. He goes over there and he doesn't, now I'm trying to just get an assessment of, like, what it looks like. I mean, I know there's a lot of water. I'll try to insert a picture, but I want to know, like, where is it coming from? So he goes over there and he doesn't call me until he's over there and has already started getting the water out. So we had not talked about a price, and he's like, I'm over here, I've got the machines hooked up, like, I'm getting the water out. And during that time, I was just kind of afraid to even ask him, because at that point he had already started. So I'm afraid to ask him, like, how much are you going to charge me for this? So I'm like, okay. And he's like, I'll call you when it's done. So he doesn't call me until, I think I had to end up calling him later that night. And I think it was either that night or the next day, he finally was like, yeah, we're done now. And he doesn't send me a picture of, like, he doesn't send me any pictures of while he's getting the water out or any equipment that he's using, he just sends me a picture of the water once it's out of the basement. And I'm telling you all this because it's important for the story. So, okay, so now the water is out of the basement. The first obstacle has been surpassed. He tells me it's going to be $3,000 for the water extraction. Then he tells me that it's going to be, he thinks that there's a burst pipe under the ground and that that's going to be about $7,000 to $10,000 on top of any damage that was done to the water heater or the furnace, which were the only things that were in the basement. So that's the first obstacle. So we're going to set him aside because, yeah, we're going to set him aside for now. So water's out. The heat is not working in the house because the furnace has been damaged. So the next obstacle is getting the heat back on the house because it is the middle of December. I don't want the pipes to freeze. That was my biggest concern, was the pipes freezing. And I'm sure you guys are wondering, like, what does this have to do with anything? Like, we want to know how God bless you, but this is how he blessed me. Like, this is how. So it's just, you just have to follow. But anyway, so okay, so I'm worried about the pipes, and I'm also worried about my tenant, you know, because if there's no heat, then after a certain time, like, they don't have to pay rent. And I'm like, no, I need you to pay rent because I need to pay the mortgage. So yes, so those are my two biggest concerns. So the water heater is not working and the furnace has been damaged. So I call the handyman that works on my house normally, and I tell him the situation. And my handyman is friends with the plumber. So he calls the plumber, and which I think he's also been to my house before. But this was a different, was he a plumber or electrician? I can't remember. But this was a different guy. And so anyway, he calls that person, and the handyman the whole time is like trying to convince me that, because we're not friends, but you know, well, I guess you could say we're friends, but anyway, so he's trying to convince me the whole time that the plumber that went over there is basically lying to me. He's like, I don't think that, you know, I forgot what they thought it was. I think that they thought it had something to do with like the power, or they weren't sure, but the plumber friend ends up going over to the house to inspect it once the water's out. And we get on a three-way call, and they're like, okay, it looks like we don't see any more water coming in. So it looks like probably it was just like the power went out and your sump pump just stopped working. So, and they were like, either that or it's coming from the city pipe, and you need to call them to get them to help you to fix it. So they're doing all this conspiracy theory, and I'm just like, I have no idea what it could be. So come to find out, there was no burst pipe. It ended up just being that the power went out and the sump pump stopped working, so the basement flooded. So the power went out, came back on, so the sump pump is okay now. But now I have to deal with the damage of the water heater in the furnace. So during this time, mind you, the tenant is still waiting, and the other big thing is that we have another year left on our lease, because we had signed a 2-year lease. So while this is happening, I'm like, I can't afford this house. Like, I can't afford to hold on to it, because what if something else happens like this again? Like, I don't, like, how, I can't handle it. In the back of my mind, I'm thinking, like, I need to sell this house. That's my next hurdle, is to start repairing stuff, because I want to sell the house. So the guy, he lets me know, like, yeah, you're gonna need a new furnace, and it's gonna be about $1,200. So just to let you know, I had about $2,000 that I could have put towards any type of repairs that needed to be done. I had about $2,000. So he told me this new furnace is gonna be $1,200 for the furnace itself, and then he was gonna charge me $800 to install it. I think, no, he's gonna charge me $500 to install it. I think. Yeah. And then for the water heater, that was going to be, I think water heaters cost about like $500 to $1,000, and then he was going to charge me like $500. I can't remember. I think he was going to charge me like $300 to $500 to install that. So right off the bat, we're already over budget. I'm like, okay, let's get the furnace. So I go ahead and order the new furnace. That's $1,200. He goes over and installs it. And I hadn't yet paid him for the installation. I was going to pay him, or maybe it was, what was I waiting for? Was I waiting for him to do the water heater as well? I can't remember. But anyway, so during that time, it was like a couple of days, or I'm not explaining the story well. That's why I should have filmed when it first happened. But basically, within a short amount of time, my tenant and I had come to an agreement to break the lease. So I was just honest with him, like, hey, like, I want to go ahead and sell the house. Like, I don't know if I can afford to really handle these type of situations. And I guess he didn't want to be in that situation either. So we were able to mutually agree to break the lease within, like, that was going to be our last month. So come January, we were going to be done. So one way that God came through, there's several ways, but that's probably the first one that we could take note of. Back to the repairs. So when that happens, I'm like, okay, it's great that, he agreed to break the lease, but now I have to basically be able to float the mortgage until the house sells. So I called the plumber electrician, and I'm like, so I just found out that, like, this is going to be my last month getting rent payment, and, like, I don't really know what to do. Like, my plan is to sell the house, but, like, I don't know where I'm going to get all this money to do these repairs, basically. And at that time, he had already installed the furnace, and he's like, okay, don't worry about paying me for that. Like, you can pretty much just pay me whenever just pay me when you can, pretty much is what he said. So I'm like, okay. And so, but I still have to get the water heater fixed because he hadn't fixed that yet. And I basically was just honest with him. I just told him, like, I really, like, I can't sell the house without having this fixed. So, like, like, are you open to anything? And he basically agreed to help me. So way number two. Way number two that God came through. So he agrees to help me. And so when it came to, because he knew that, like, you can't sell the house with a broken water heater. So he agreed to that. I wanted to get a new water heater. He wanted to try to fix the old one, but it had been flooded out, so it wouldn't ignite. And he had went over there like 2 times, maybe, I think, to try to get it to work, and it wasn't working. So I'm anxious to get it back on. So I'm trying to, like, let's get a new one, and he's wanting to do one thing. Finally, I'm about to order the new one, and he was like, let me just go over there one more time, just to see if I can get it to work. It might have been able to dry by now, and maybe I can get it to fire back up. So I'm thinking, like, this is not going to work. Like, it's been flooded out. So he goes over there, and he sends me a picture, and it's ignited. And I'm like, oh my goodness. I don't have to buy a new water heater. So was that way number 3 or was that 2? I can't remember. But I think that was way number 3 that God came through. This whole time, God is doing things in ways to let me know, like, this is coming from me. I'm gonna see you through it. It looks hard, but it's coming from me. So the water heater is back on, the furnace is fixed. Now I can sell the house. So crazy part is, when I bought the house, I had a feeling not to buy it. Now, disobedience is a whole nother video. That's a whole different video. But so yeah, so I was never supposed to have the house in the beginning. But repentance is really all you need to get back in the right direction. God will redeem any situation. So I'm like, okay, God, I know I gotta trust you. Like I'm trusting you. So I'm ready to sell the house, and the lease has been broken. Everything is fixed. So I call up realtors and I'm like, hey, oh, a house on my street had just sold, and it had sold for a good amount. It was like a few doors down. And so I'm like, oh, this is a great time. So I call my realtor and I'm like, because I wasn't sure like what my house was worth. But when I saw that one, because all the houses on my street are like same, they're the same. They're like same square footage, same bedroom, bathroom. So I call the realtor and I'm like, hey, I saw you just sold that house. Like, what do you think mine is worth? And she tells me, and I'm like, okay, like that, that sounds good. Like I'll have a little something. I already knew in my heart that the Lord wanted me to sell the house because I wasn't supposed to have it anyway. So there was no use to holding on to it. And so we're getting ready to list it. And she asked me, she's like, are there any issues that you know of? And basically what happened was I had to end up either, when it came to the basement, she's like, you're gonna have to either disclose the water problem or you're going to have to fix it. So because there was an issue with like water coming into the basement as well when it rained. So she was like, you're gonna have to either fix it or you're gonna have to disclose it. And I wanted to be honest and ethical because that's what I would want done for me. And also I wanted to go ahead and fix it because I felt like if I had disclosed it, that I was going to end up getting less money because the buyer's going to want a discount for any type of issue. So I have to fix it. So I ended up calling the realtor that I used when I bought the house because I'm familiar with him, I'm comfortable with him, and I tell him the situation, and he's like, yeah, you can either disclose it, not disclose it, or you can fix it. So I'm like, well, I don't want to hide it, I don't want to disclose it, so I decide to fix it. So now we have another bill, right? And I still don't have any leftover money, and I still already have to pay the handyman. I'm thinking I have to pay the first guy that came over and got the water out. And there were also some other small repairs that needed to be done to the house to get it ready to list. So I'm like, I don't know how I'm going to pay for all this. Like, they were charging about like $5,000 to waterproof the basement. So long story short, I was able to find someone who accepted like a small down payment and then was willing to take the rest of the money at closing. So basically I just had all these people in my circle that were willing to take a later payment so that I was able to sell the house. So my handyman, the one that I had called, he was willing to do the small repairs inside the house and get paid later because we knew each other. His friend was able to accept payment later, and the people that I found to waterproof, same thing. So all this is happening, and finally the house is ready. So now it's time to sell it. So we finally listed the house, and this is now February because it's around Super Bowl weekend. We're up for a few days and we get an offer. We had an open house and I think maybe 10 people came and we got an offer. And I had a certain number in mind that I was hoping to get, and I think they offered a little bit more than that. They offered a little bit more than what I wanted, and they also offered no inspections. So with like I think it was like a 50-day close. It was like a longer close, but I still accepted it because it was like really the only offer, and it was for the amount that I wanted. No inspection, which was the best part. So we go under contract, and like a few days into the contract, she backs out, and I don't know why. They said it was financing, but she was an investor, so I think she really just ran the numbers and then was like, I don't really want it, which upset me because I feel like she could have did that before making an offer. I think that she thought that we were just going to get so many offers, and she kind of just, wanted to be the best one. But anyway, so we fell out of contract and we had to go back on the market, which I was devastated about because I thought that people were going to think that there's something wrong with the house. And so we go back under contract. We ended up getting another offer. So we actually ended up getting 2 more offers, but one of them was I ended up dropping the price to try to get like more eyes on the property. And we ended up getting 2 more offers, and one was for like less than I was hoping for, like $20,000 less. And one was for basically what I was looking to get. It was the amount I was looking for with an inspection and like a 30-day close. So we took that one. I took that one. And we go under contract. And this time I'm very nervous because the first one backed out, and I'm scared that the second one is going to do the same thing. So we get under contract, and this time there is an inspection. And if you guys don't know anything about like buying a house, when you do an inspection, they are looking for like anything that's wrong with the house. So I was really nervous that like they're gonna find something that they don't like, because these people were first-time home buyers. So I really thought that like they were gonna get freaked out by the inspection. And I thought that they were either gonna ask for a ton of money off or that they were just gonna back out. Now, mind you, I didn't think anything was like seriously wrong with the house, but I didn't know for sure. Like I didn't know if it needed a new roof or what, because it was an older house. So, like I'm super nervous. And so we get to the inspection part, and we have like a 5-day, I think it was like 5 days, where they had to do their inspection and then let me know if they wanted money off or if they wanted to cancel or move forward. So during this time, I'm super anxious, and I go outside one morning to like, I guess, just do a little devotional time. And normally, like when I open up my Bible in the morning or anytime after praying, I kind of just wait to see if the Lord puts something on my heart or mind, and then I'll turn somewhere. But this morning I went out, and it was windy, but it was crazy because like it was early in the morning. It was still dark outside. And so basically I'm out there, and I'm kind of just like holding my Bible because I'm waiting to see like where I should turn to. And I opened the Bible up, and the wind had blew the Bible back to Isaiah 41. So I'm gonna read it. I know you guys are probably like, girl, where are you going with this? It was a lot, but I wanted you to get all the details are important. So anyway, the wind blew it back to Isaiah 41. And I'm looking, I'm like, okay, like what's here for me in this, my current situation? And I gloss over the part that says, where is it? Hold on, I have to find it because this is kind of like what I did when I was outside. It basically said to fear not. Verse 10 that stood out to me. So it was Isaiah 41, verse 10. It says, "Fear not, for I am with you. Be not dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you. I will help you. I will uphold you with my righteous right hand." So this happened on March 8th. This instance right here. And it was really the Lord's way of giving me confirmation, because I was an anxious wreck. Like, my realtor would tell you, like, I was very anxious during this whole process, because it was really like all this stuff had been leading up to, all these different things had been leading up to this moment. And I'm like, okay, I just need to sell it. And I had all these people waiting for payments, and it was stressful. But anyway, so I read that, and I didn't realize it right away, but part of me did realize that was confirmation at the time. And because I came inside and I was like, okay, God, like, I'm gonna, I'm gonna trust you. And later that same day, the verse of the day in the Bible app was, I believe it was Joshua, the verse in Joshua that says, have I not commanded you, be strong and courageous. I think that was the verse of the day. And then later that day when I was driving, I listened to one of Dr. Stanley's sermons, but it had nothing to do with being anxious or fear or anything. Like, that wasn't the topic of the sermon, but he went over a verse. I can't remember which verse it was, but it might have been Joshua also, and that was in that sermon. So that was 3 times in that day that I had gotten confirmation from the Lord that not to fear. And so on that day, I was like, okay, Lord, like, I'm going to trust you. And after that day, everything went smoothly. Everything went lightning fast. So the crazy part about this situation is that once we had gotten under the new contract, the buyers were able to close within 2.5 weeks, which is unheard of. Like, for a home sale, it normally takes at least 30 days, because they have to go through their process with getting approved, underwriting, all these things. And I'm telling you, from the time that we went under contract to the time that we closed, it was 2.5 weeks. And it was just crazy to see how God, like, quickly moved from the time that he let me know, like, I'm with you. So what happened was they ended up waiting until the last day of the inspection period. So it was like on like a Sunday. It ended on a Monday. Sunday night, I got an email from my realtor saying what they wanted fixed. And it was 3 or 4 things, very small things. And it was just amazing, because that was the thing that I was worried about the most. It's like, are they going to back out? And just small stuff. So we move forward and like, okay, like, I can breathe a little bit. And so now we have to get past the appraisal. So they ordered the appraisal, and the appraiser comes out a few days later, and I wasn't so much worried about the appraisal, but the only thing that I wasn't sure about was the fact, my house had 1 bathroom, whereas all the other houses had like 1.5 or 2. That was the only way that my house was different than the rest of them. And also, I had an AC unit or HVAC system installed in my house. And when they installed it, they had to take the closet out of one of the bedrooms to make room for the HVAC system. And so I was kind of nervous about like whether or not they were still going to count that bedroom as an actual bedroom, because it didn't have a closet. So come to find out, like, there was a new law in Maryland where like you don't have to have an actual closet. You just have to have like a window, certain height ceilings, and then like you have to have like a shelf. So I just bought like a wardrobe with a shelf in it from IKEA and put it in there. So appraiser comes by, and I'm like, a couple days goes by, and my realtor texts me, and he's like, the appraisal came back, it's good to go. I don't know how much it appraised for, but it was enough for us to be able to close. And I was like, oh my gosh. This was a few days later, because apparently they had put a rush on the appraisal. I didn't know about it. These people really wanted the house. And like, when you're, I don't know, I just didn't know how badly they wanted it. My realtor did tell me, like, they came to the open house, and he was telling me, like, yeah, I talked to the wife, and she, like, it's been her dream. Like, she grew up here. She always dreamt of owning a house in the neighborhood where she grew up. And he told me all these things, but I didn't really know. Like, you don't really know who's on the other end of the deal. So anyway, so appraisal comes back good to go. Now we just have to get they have to get their final approval from the lender to be able to close. March 8th to we closed on March 22nd. So that is how God blessed me just from tithing. So like I said, I had started tithing. It had only been like a few weeks, but I had committed myself, like with that $30, I was like, I'm gonna tithe. Lord, I'm gonna see what you do. I'm gonna see if you deliver on your promise. And during that time, I had no idea that God was gonna do all of that and do it in that way. Like, I just had no idea how he would keep his promise to open up heavens and pour down a blessing until there was no more need. He did do exactly that, because when we closed, I was able to walk away with the amount that you either see in the thumbnail or on the screen. I'll put it here now. And it was enough money to pay off all of my consumer debt, except for my car. But credit cards, personal loans, like, it covered all of it. And so there was no more need there. So it feels weird to just have your rent and your car, and that's pretty much it. So that is the way that God blessed me. I do have this is like the settlement statement right here, so you guys can see. It's not focusing, but that's the settlement statement, and that's how much I got to me when everything was said and done. Also, I also got like a refund from my escrow account, which was for like another couple $1,000. So that was just about $40,000 that the Lord blessed me with, from starting with a simple $30 tithe. So it really just does require a heart of repentance. And whatever situation you are in right now, I don't know the details of it, but I do know that God will deliver on his word, and it won't be in a way that you will, like, it most likely won't be in a way that you can foresee. But so don't try to, like, if you're in a situation right now where like your finances look shaky, like, first of all, you need to know that it's okay. God invites you to put him to the test. He invites you to return and start tithing where you are, whatever the amount is. If it's $30 off of $300 salary, or if it's $5 off of a $50 salary, he doesn't care the amount that you make. He cares that you give him 10%. It really is for the kingdom. It has to do with, it is a principle that he has given us, but even more so, it's because it goes into his house. And from his house, he's able to bless other people. So whenever you receive a blessing, most times it's from a person, right? Or an institution, or it doesn't literally just fall from the sky. It comes from somewhere. And so God, his money is just distributed in those ways. And so he calls us to tithe into his house. And in turn, he blesses others and we are blessed. Whatever situation you're in, you don't have to worry about all the details. You just have to trust that he will keep his word. And a lot of time, or sometimes it won't be in a way that feels good right away, because he also wants to make sure that you realize that it's coming from him. So everything that happened in my situation, from the beginning, I knew that it was of God. I knew that, he was doing things in a way that I had to know that it was coming from him. And I had to rely on him and trust him, because I only had $2,000 at the time. And if you're wondering what happened with that first plumber, he never called me back. So he charged me $3,000 and then never called me back. So I haven't blocked him. I haven't, tried to run off on him. He just never responded. The last message I sent him, he told me it was going to be $3,000. And then he was like, have you talked to the insurance? And I was like, no, just go ahead and send over the invoice. And he never responded. Or no, he did respond. He said, I'm out of town. I'll have my secretary send it. And then after that, he never said anything else. So that was the fourth way that God came through, or the fifth, or whatever. But so I hope that this testimony has been meaningful. I feel it's my first time doing something like this, so I feel like it was kind of all over the place, but hopefully it gives you the courage and helps you in your faith, to just be able to try it for yourself. And yeah, that's all I can say. If you liked this video, please share it, subscribe, but mostly share it so that other people are able to hear the same testimony and just try it for themselves. So thank you so much for watching, and God bless.